This is the story of an agency that started with fewer than 70 people and became one of the most powerful law enforcement organizations in the world. It hunted gangsters, chased spies, took down mob bosses, built one of the most famous crime labs on Earth. And after 9/11, it transformed into a frontline counterterrorism agency. But the FBI's history isn't just heroic raids and wanted posters. It's also a story of surveillance, political scandals, civil liberties, secret files, and one man who controlled the Bureau for nearly half a century. So how did a small special agent force created in 1908 become the Federal Bureau of Investigation? To understand that, we have to go back to a time when America had a problem. At the beginning of the 1900s, the United States was changing fast. Cities were growing, railroads connected the country, cars were becoming common. Criminals could cross state lines faster than local police could follow them, and that created a huge problem. If someone committed a crime in one state and escaped into another, local police often had limited power to chase them. The federal government needed investigators of its own. So in 1908, Attorney General Charles Bonaparte created a small investigative force inside the Department of Justice. It did not even have the famous FBI name yet. In fact, it was originally described as a special agent force, and Stanley Finch became its first leader. 1 year later, in 1909, it officially became the Bureau of Investigation, or BOI. At the time, it had fewer than 70 employees. No dramatic music, no most wanted posters, no Hoover building. Just a small group of federal investigators trying to figure out what federal policing would even look like. When World War I began, America suddenly needed to worry about espionage, sabotage, and loyalty at home. In 1917, Congress passed the Espionage Act, giving the Bureau more authority to investigate spying, draft interference, and efforts to undermine the war effort. But after the war, fear didn't go away. In 1919 and 1920, America was hit by a wave of fear over communism, anarchism, labor unrest, and bombings. This period became known as the First Red Scare. Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer launched aggressive investigations against radicals. A young Justice Department lawyer named J. Edgar Hoover helped gather intelligence on suspected radicals. Then came the Palmer raids. Thousands of people were swept up. Many were immigrants. Many were never convicted of anything. The raids were later heavily criticized for violating civil liberties. And this is where the FBI's story becomes complicated. Because from the beginning, the Bureau was caught between two missions: protect the country, but don't become so powerful that it threatens the freedoms it claims to protect. In 1924, J. Edgar Hoover was named acting director of the Bureau of Investigation. By the end of that year, he was appointed director. He was only 29 years old, and he would remain in charge until 1972, nearly 48 years. That means Hoover led the Bureau through Prohibition, the Great Depression, World War II, the Cold War, the Civil Rights era, and the beginning of modern American politics. Under Hoover, the Bureau became more professional. Agents were expected to be trained, disciplined, and loyal. The Bureau expanded fingerprint identification, built national records, and developed a reputation for scientific crime fighting. In 1924, the Bureau created an identification division, consolidating fingerprint files in Washington, D.C. Then, in 1932, it established a technical laboratory, which would eventually become the famous FBI laboratory. Hoover understood something powerful. If the FBI could control information, it could control investigations. And if it could control investigations, it could become indispensable. But the Bureau's public image was about to explode, because America was entering the age of gangsters. The 1920s and 1930s were the golden age of American gangsters. Prohibition had created a massive illegal alcohol economy. Organized crime grew richer and more violent. Names like Al Capone, John Dillinger, Babyface Nelson, and Bonnie and Clyde became national headlines. The Bureau became famous for chasing criminals who crossed state lines. One major turning point was the 1932 Lindbergh kidnapping. After the baby son of aviator Charles Lindbergh was kidnapped and murdered, Congress passed the Federal Kidnapping Act, giving the Bureau authority to investigate kidnappings that cross state borders. This was the era when federal law enforcement became dramatic, public, and cinematic. Agents were no longer just investigators. They were G-men, government men. Then, in 1935, the Bureau finally got the name we know today, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The name became official on March 22, 1935, and Hoover knew how to sell it. Movies, radio shows, newspapers, and wanted posters turned the FBI into a symbol of clean, scientific, modern law enforcement. But as the FBI's legend grew, so did Hoover's power. And that power would shape American history for decades. J. Edgar Hoover died on May 2, 1972. His death ended one of the longest and most powerful leadership periods in American government history. After Hoover, the country started asking hard questions. How much power should the FBI have? How much surveillance is too much? Should one person ever be allowed to run an agency like that for nearly half a century? In the 1970s, investigations into U.S. intelligence agencies exposed abuses by the FBI, CIA, NNA, and others. The FBI's secret domestic surveillance programs became part of a larger national debate about civil liberties and government power. The result was reform. FBI directors would eventually be limited to a 10-year term, designed to prevent another Hoover-style reign. The Bureau also changed how it operated, with more oversight from Congress, the courts, and the Department of Justice. But the FBI wasn't going away. It was about to enter a new kind of war. A war against organized crime. In 1970, Congress passed the Organized Crime Control Act, which included RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. RICO became one of the FBI's most powerful tools against organized crime. Instead of only arresting individual criminals, prosecutors could target entire criminal enterprises. This helped the FBI go after mafia families, corrupt organizations, and complex criminal networks. Then came terrorism. Before 9/11, the FBI investigated terrorism, but the attacks of September 11, 2001 changed the Bureau forever. After September 11, 2001, the FBI shifted from being mostly a law enforcement agency that solved crimes after they happened to an intelligence-driven agency trying to prevent attacks before they happened. That changed everything. Counterterrorism became a top priority. Intelligence sharing increased. The Bureau worked more closely with the CIA, NSA, Department of Homeland Security, and foreign partners. Then came another battlefield: cybercrime. Bank robbers no longer needed masks. Some criminals only needed laptops. The FBI began investigating hackers, ransomware groups, online fraud, foreign cyber operations, child exploitation networks, and digital threats that could come from anywhere in the world. The FBI had started in 1908 chasing federal crimes in a country connected by railroads. A century later, it was chasing threats across the internet.
Today, the FBI is no longer just chasing bank robbers, mob bosses, or spies in trench coats. Its battlefield has changed. Now, threats can come from a laptop on the other side of the world, a terrorist cell hidden in plain sight, a foreign government stealing secrets, a corrupt official taking money behind closed doors, or a criminal network moving millions without ever touching cash. The FBI investigates terrorism, cybercrime, counterintelligence, public corruption, civil rights violations, organized crime, white-collar crime, violent crime, and crimes against children. But even after more than a century, the same question still follows the Bureau everywhere it goes. How much power should one agency have? Because the FBI has been seen as both protector and threat, hero and villain, watchdog and weapon. And maybe that's what makes its history so fascinating. The story of the FBI isn't just about crime. It's about power. It's about fear. It's about security. And it's about what happens when a country builds an agency strong enough to protect democracy, but also strong enough to test it. From a small group of investigators in 1908 to one of the most famous law enforcement agencies on Earth, the FBI's history is really the history of America trying to protect itself from enemies outside, enemies inside, and sometimes from its own mistakes. And that's the full history of the FBI. Follow for more stories like this.